Not a problem. Now it's streaming live.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will dig right into it.
Okay, good.
Good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third executive interview of today. On stage, we have Captain Koki Mutungi, who we've been waiting for all day to hear from her aviation story. She is the first female in the African continent to become certified as the captain of the Boeing 787 Dreamliner aircraft. She will be taking the stage and taking us through her aviation journey. Captain Koki Captain Koki's career started with KQ, the national carrier of Kenya, where she rose through the ranks to her current position. She sits on various boards, and her passion on aviation and mentoring is evident, and her presentations have largely revolved around issues on women and girls in aviation. She also has interest in mentoring and coaching young and upcoming aviation professionals, and in her free time, she participates in mentoring sessions with various schools and colleges. Captain Koki is a lady of many firsts. We'll hear about this in the discussion. The session will be moderated by William Ayabe, who is the operations assistant at Nairobi Flight Training. William is also a student pilot with a private pilot license, working towards his commercial pilot license. And currently he works part-time in operations at the Nairobi Flight Training as the operations assistant. He has a passion for African aviation and believes in sustainable growth for mutual benefit for all industry players across Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next 40 minutes, sit back, relax, and enjoy. We are ready to take off for a very exciting story of Captain Koki Mutungi, and I now hand over to William to take us through. William, over to you.
Thank you so much, Maureen. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you joining us from across the world. Today's guest is Captain Koki Mutungi. I don't think she needs much of an introduction. She is definitely a household name across the African aviation space. And without further ado, I hand over to you, Captain Koki Mutungi. I hope you can be able to explain to us why the name Captain Koki Mutungi is quite famous.
I think you have introduced me quite well. I don't know about being famous, but yeah, thank you for having me.
Yes. So, Captain, kindly briefly take us through your career journey in KQ, starting from the first type of aircraft that you flew right after high school, after flying school.
Oh, you'll be surprised that after flying school, I actually had a stint in general aviation. I flew Mira for a while before joining Kenya Airways. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, I got into Kenya Airways and I started on the smallest plane they had at the time. That was the Fokker 50. And when I joined, I was a cadet and graduated to a second officer and then a first officer, still on the Fokker 50. Then worked on that for a while before being promoted to the 737. Actually, you know, we follow a seniority list. So what happens is you work your way up as a first officer. A first officer sits on the right-hand side, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, co-pilot, what we call the co-pilot. Yeah. So I worked my way up the ranks from Fokker 50 to 737 to 767, and then came back down for command as a captain, started on the 737 once again, then the 767, and now I'm on the Dreamliner.
Oh, wonderful. And such an interesting fleet that you have experience on. And generally, we believe, and it's actually, it's factual that the aviation industry is quite male dominated. And I believe that you actually met a couple of hurdles through your progression as first officer, then as captain. I don't know, what were the corporate hurdles and regulatory hurdles that you might have experienced through your career journey?
Actually, I've been very fortunate to be with a very accommodating employer. Kenya Airways has been very accommodating. I think the one thing that stood out for me when it comes to hurdles is, having been the first woman and the only woman in the airline for 6 years, a time came when I went the family way and I had to go on maternity, and they had never had this before. And we had the wrangles of, I was sent on unpaid maternity leave and I had to fight that. And well, all this has changed now. And considering we have about 30 women in the airline, they've worked on it, and I wouldn't really call it a hurdle anymore.
Oh, wonderful. So you are also a trailblazer, not just the first captain, on the type, but also you worked on corporate issues that affected women in the industry, right? Like,
if you want to, basically that was the only thing I had really had to go through, the hurdle when it came to maternity leave and pay and time off for maternity, but it was well handled and it's in place to date.
Okay, that's really wonderful. And tell me, you are a first. You're actually the first female pilot in KQ, right?
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are, and that means you did not necessarily have someone who had treaded your journey before you, so you do not have a solid mentor, or did you have a solid mentor through your career progression? Did you?
You're actually right. I mean, being a first, I had to navigate a lot of the waters on my own, but it did help that I was in the industry, so I would approach him sometimes for advice here and there. But notwithstanding, I still went through things like stigma, when people saw a woman in the flight deck. I'll give you an example. My very first flight, actually, on the Fokker 50, I was flying to Kisumu, and we didn't have all these terrorist threats and stuff. So we used to take off with the door open. Passengers could see into the flight deck. So we had these passengers boarding in Kisumu, and this guy turns left and sees me in the flight deck and starts yelling, "He's not a guinea pig." Can you imagine? So, and that was my first flight. You can imagine what that did to me. But fortunately, the captain I was with was very stern and asked the guy to get off the flight, and he was not going to fly with us anymore. But because he wanted to get to his destination urgently, he had no choice but to to me. And the flight went quite well. Yeah.
Wow,
So I went through stuff like that initially.
So basically, now through that experience, you experience a lot of firsts for women in KQ. Now, are you actively now involved in mentorship for now the young women joining KQ, or even planning to start flying school? Are you actively involved in mentorship programs?
Oh yeah, definitely. I do go to schools and clubs and have even one-on-one sessions with people interested in. I just had my last one yesterday. People are in touch with me on social media, on my email, and it's something I take passionately. I like to walk people through the journey. They don't necessarily have to go through what I went through initially, but things have changed. This is 25 years later.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And I really want to know, do you feel like your employer or the industry in general is actively involved in mentorship and actually genuinely interesting young people into the industry and developing skills or creating an atmosphere for a general interest in aviation?
I think that's a tricky question at the moment. I mean, with the COVID-19 pandemic, it wouldn't be a priority for many airlines right now. They are business at the end of the day. But I think they do their where it comes to, well, when I go out, sometimes it is the initiative of the airline to send me to speak to some of these young people. So they are actually making an effort. And also we've seen stuff like the inclusivity programs that are coming up. I mean, United Airlines US has done a really good job with inclusivity, where they intentionally have a quota for women. not just any women, have to be qualified. And, you know, they're not just picking any woman. Of course, you have to be qualified, but they have intentionally created a quota for picking women. But notwithstanding, once again, Kenya Airways has done very well. I mean, we're at 5%, which is one of the highest worldwide. Yeah.
Okay, and not just for flying, but also the supporting careers in aviation, things like flight dispatch, maintenance. I wouldn't call maintenance supporting, but because it's a core industry. Do you feel like the population of the percentage of women in such careers is also wanting, or is it in a good position? Are we doing well as Kenya?
I wouldn't just point to Kenya specifically. I think it's wanting everywhere. I mean, STEM-related careers have a long way to go. They're all wanting, women numbers are low everywhere you go when it comes to STEM-related careers. I mean, look at things worldwide. Honestly, we're at about 45%. When you look at like engineers, yet you go to stuff like law and it's like 38%. So we still have a long way to go, but we're getting there.
Oh, okay, good. That's good. So we're gonna change gears a bit and move on now to something that people normally don't discuss. We always want to look at the beauty and you flying KQ, but I feel like not so many people talk about your actual flight training journey, right? And for women, I understand there are also a lot of challenges just within the flight training journey, and that's where you are made or broken as a pilot. So generally, just take us through how your flight training experience was, and if you had any challenges or any hurdles, you can also explain them to us as well.
Okay, so after high school, I went to School of Flying for my PPL. I finished that and proceeded to Oklahoma to Crabtree, where I did my CPL. Came back home for my instrument rating back at Kenya School of Flying. And then after that, did my stint at Wilson Airport, flying Mirage on a Cessna 402.
Wow.
And then the opportunity with Kenya Airways came up, and that's unforgettable. It was such a rigid interview. I mean, I went through like 7 interviews, if I remember. And
it was tough back then as well.
It was tough. It was tough. It's tough, I believe.
I mean, we need to get the top pedigree of pilots, so I understand the process. Yeah, definitely. You just mentioned that you did your private pilot's license in Kenya, but you proceeded for your commercial license in the US, right? Yeah, generally. So I just want to know, why is there a preference for training abroad in spite of the costs? Why do people still want to train abroad? Is it that Kenya we don't have capacity to train pilots, or what is the issue? What do you feel? I think that
since my time, during my time, it was access to flight training institutions. You'd find we only had 1 or 2, so it was restrictive. When you have many students, you know, you didn't have enough time to fly, but it's changed. And also cost was a constraint at that time. It was cheaper to go out and fly than to do it locally. But now, so we have quite a number of schools now. And I think it would actually make sense to fly here than to fly out now. I mean,
So do you have confidence in our flight training capacity in Kenya? Or does KQ have confidence? Yeah?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Good. Yeah, and just generally, I would also want to ask you, do you think the training costs currently are exorbitant? Do you feel like, back then you told me it was cheaper to go abroad than to train here in Kenya? And do you feel like the training costs put off a lot of aspiring pilots and aspiring aviation professionals?
I think they have. I mean, the costs are very restrictive. It is very expensive. But then again, I don't blame the training institutions. I think AFRAA, for example, can negotiate with governments and think of strategies of some kind, because if you think about it, they have to pay for landing fees, parking fees, there's taxes, there's fuel is very costly, aviation fuel and things like that. If the government gave some kind of subsidies, and even ultimately think about like if these guys were allowed to import training aircraft without duty, you know, these things drive the cost down, and that will also translate to what they charge the students. I think it would be a great help. Yeah.
Okay, so generally what you mean to say is the flight training industry itself is not to blame, but the hurdles that are there are actually regulatory. And are they really regulatory?
It's not really regulatory. It's how do I put it? It's economic, regulatory, name it. Because if the flight school feels the pinch in their pocket, they have to translate it to the fees. And that makes fees very high. So, and hence people cannot afford flight training.
Yeah, it's nice. So, and generally, comparing Kenya to the training standards in the US and the platforms that they use, I'm aware that they use more efficient training platforms. Do you feel like if the training institutions were to invest in such equipment, such as the DA-40, or just generally the more efficient aircrafts and simulators, do you think this would also be able to push down the cost?
Well, I'm not the best person to answer that question, but yeah.
Oh, good. So no problem. So I think we diverted a bit, so we could go back now to we could now go on to, let's talk about STEM. You mentioned a bit about STEM. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Yeah. So as a young girl growing up, what picked up your interest in a STEM-related career path?
Well, I always had a fascination with aircraft. I guess it was because of exposure. Having had a father who was a pilot, I started flying with him at about 1.5 years, 2 years.
Yeah.
And it happened regularly. And I used to mention that I want to be a pilot, and everybody thought I was joking. But I could see interest had sparked from a very young age.
Okay. Oh, nice. So, and generally, we have a lot of STEM organizations that run STEM that expose women, young girls in STEM careers. But other than just exposing the young girls to the aviation industry, what can we actively do to genuinely spark interest in STEM subjects among girls? Because I feel like there is actually a gap there.
You're right, but I think there's very low visibility for women in STEM. We need to see more women out there to create interest. I think once again, we do a lot of CSR projects, and KQ sends a lot of women out. When you see it in the media, I know you see a lot of female pilots on our CSR, and that's creating that visibility that it can be done. This can be done by women. Yeah. And also, once again, like I mentioned, having the inclusivity programs, that would be a great, and mentioning them. When you go for mentorship programs, mention we have inclusivity programs, we have this, and have the women pilots and other professionals in STEM pay it forward, you know, the ones who've actually made it, pay it forward and go mentor. And
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Generally, I know the inclusivity program, especially with United, and for them, it has actually worked out really well because they have the highest percentage of female pilots across the industry. So I feel like KQ should actually benchmark them and see what they're doing and what we could also do. Yeah, generally.
I think that would be awesome. I hope my bosses are watching. Awesome.
Nice stuff. Good. So, and one more question. What advice do you have for a young girl out there, just a dream to take up a career in a STEM related industry, not just aviation?
Yeah. I mean, there are diverse career opportunities in STEM, name it. It's just, we should stop limiting ourselves. Anything is possible. You can do anything you set out your mind to do.
Yeah.
And most of these things are skill-based. It's not about your gender. It's your skill set. It's usually a level playing ground. It's you to do what you need to do. You perform, the qualifications are just the same as they are for men. You need to prove yourself and you can do it. It's just about determination and how you do it, how you go about it.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Now, I'd like to change gears again and come back to the aviation industry. Yeah, we've been talking about a pilot shortage, and on ground, the pilot shortage is not felt. Yeah, basically, we have a lot of students leaving flying school and struggling to get jobs. Yeah. Do you feel like the pilot shortage is artificial, or is it something that is actually there?
Don't forget that when COVID happened, it's unprecedented. Usually when we have other shortages or anything like that, there's statistics, there's studies. We don't have any kind of statistics. COVID, like I said, is completely unprecedented. So you work on it day by day. You saw all airlines quickly went and retrenched, thinking this thing would last. And now a shortage was created and numbers have picked up again, and now they're back to hiring. You can't really tell what the trend will be, but I think it's an upward trend as we speak now. There will eventually be a shortage, not necessarily now, but in the near future. Yeah.
Okay. And I think this question is somewhat of a repetition, but I just wanted to highlight something. So during this COVID-19 pandemic recovery period, what is a prospects outlook within the next, say, 10 years for young guys? Do you think KQ will have a preference for the furloughed pilots, or will they actually now will they have extra capacity to take even furthermore people? Do you feel that way, or is it different?
10 years is a very long time in the aviation industry. Sure, the young people will have jobs. In the near future, it would only make commercial sense to get furloughed pilots, because airlines have taken a hit, they've taken a big hit financially. And it only makes sense to get furloughed pilots who are already trained as opposed to starting to train from scratch. Yeah, but I mean, like I say, 10 years is a really long time. I'm speaking about furloughed pilots in the next 2 years. After that, everything should open up.
Good. So what advice do you have for that fresh CPL holder with a license about to expire, who is waiting to go into KQ? What advice do you have for such a person? Do you advise him to hold on to the license, or?
Of course, hold on to your license. I mean, you earned it, but also I think people need your only ambition cannot be to join the airline. That is a plus, but there are a lot of opportunities in general aviation. You can't stay home hoping to join the airline when they start hiring. There are opportunities out there for flying in general aviation and in other outfits.
So you also spent a bit of time in general aviation before you went into KQ?
It wasn't that long. I did about 8 months.
Okay. So it is definitely a good platform to build your hours there. Good.
Yeah.
So good. So moving on to now career pilot development by airlines in general. Across the world, actually, not just Africa, airlines do develop their own pilots. And do you think employment prospects for young people improve with such programs? And do you think the AFRAA partners airlines should also take up such programs?
I think actually AFRAA partner airlines do have such programs. The ab initio programs. I believe Ethiopia has it, Kenya has it. And the advantage of that is when you get somebody fresh out of high school who's performed extremely well, you already have the creme de la creme from high school, and you put them in an ab initio program and train them to your standards and to your expectation, you get the sort of pilot you expect to have in your establishment. in your airline. Yes,
okay.
and they grow with you as you expect them. You know, when you get somebody from elsewhere, you have this one trained here and this one trained here, they come with their habits. And these ones have the standard operating procedures etched in them right from the start, and the airline what they want. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So generally for the AB initial program, do you with the bonding period, do you think is it advantageous to train yourself, or is it better off for you as a young pilot to go through the AB initial program?
I would think if you had access to the ab initio, because don't forget, flying is very restrictive when it comes to cost. I think a lot of people would have wanted to fly. The only thing that stopped it was the cost of training. And when you get an opportunity like an ab initio training where your training cost is covered and you get to pay it back later, I think run for it. Yeah,
that's amazing. Good stuff. So I just want to open the the panel to the audience. If there's any question, you could always just shoot it into the question box, and our session host Maureen will be able to pass it on to us as well. Good stuff. Maureen, do you have any questions?
Thank you, William. Yes, I have one question from the floor, Mamitso from DRC. And he asks, how did you make it to captaincy? Was it easy? You've told us about how your journey was, but was it easy? And how can you help us to be experienced female pilots?
Is she already a pilot? Anyway,
this one seems not yet, yes.
Well, it's not easy. It's not easy. And this is one of those careers where you have to be willing to read and to be on top of your performance for the rest of your career. Every 6 months, we go for a simulator check. Every year we do a check online on the route as you fly. It's constantly checks. And this is because you cannot afford to be complacent. You have all these lives that you're in charge of. You have this equipment that you're in charge of. You cannot afford to be complacent. So that you have to constantly be reading, you have to constantly perform, and that's not easy.
Amazing. Any other question from the floor?
Not yet.
Okay, good. So the floor is still open, and good. Captain Koki, I think I'll take this opportunity to give you the floor as well, to just advise the young aspiring aviators once more. Yes, generally.
Okay, so once again, I'll say flying has its challenges, but it's one of those careers that has been very fulfilling and also lucrative for me. I definitely advise anybody interested to go for it. I've loved my journey so far, and for those women and young girls who are interested in it, go for it. You won't regret. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Okay, and then I can add to the questions. There's the aspect of on-the-job training. We have many pilots who complete their flying school and need some flight hours. However, the challenge is getting that opportunity, and it becomes so hard. So, Captain, what would you advise such young aspiring pilots to do?
You see, once again, it goes to cost. It's not difficult to get flight hours. You have to just pay for it and you will fly and get your hours. Once again, it goes to the restriction of cost, and once that is subsidized or comes down in some form or way, it's very accessible to people out there. You'll be able to go out and just build your hours from your pocket and be very marketable. The more hours you have, the more marketable you are.
We have some very good comments from the floor encouraging you, Captain, and commending you for this exemplary journey. Keep the flag high and continue with your mentorship of young and aspiring youth, especially women who are looking up to you as their role model?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I believe we are exactly on time. Are we, Maureen?
I see there's another question.
Oh, okay, good. Just shoot it.
Okay, let me read the question. The question is, after completion of your first license in Kenya, did you have to start all over when you went to the US, or did they accept your Kenyan license? Did Kenya accept your US license, and did you have to convert anything?
No, I did not have to convert anything. My license was accepted in the US.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is just more of a comment. What will the world be if Koki had not been born? We're just proud of you. The industry is proud of you, Captain. So
Thank
we are
you
very
so
happy to have you. And as AFRAA, we thank you for gracing the occasion to share with us your story.
Thank you very much.
Now we can give you the opportunity to give your key message. What will your key message be to stakeholders, to young aspiring aviators, and also to young women who are aspiring to get careers in aviation, and specifically to those looking at STEM careers?
I think I covered those looking into STEM careers, but mostly now I think is the stakeholders. We need to see like gender ministries and be more proactive when it comes to promoting STEM careers in women, finding ways of subsidizing, paying for scholarships and stuff like that to encourage more women to get into the industries, the various industries that are STEM related.
Thank you very much. Anything else from the moderator before we wrap up the session?
Yeah, amazing stuff. And I want to thank you, AFRAA, for giving me this opportunity to interview Captain Koki Mutungi. And I also want to thank Captain Koki Mutungi for joining us and being such an inspiration to many of us. Yeah, and from me to you, I'd love you to just keep it up and shoot for the stars. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Thank you. So we have come to the close of this executive interview by our guest on panel, Captain Koki Mutungi. It's our hope and our expectation that you found it quite valuable and interesting. We now proceed to the conclusion of the event with the key recommendations that have been made at each session. So kindly allow me to share the screen on that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for participating at the activities of day one of the Women and Youth Conference. Today's proceedings focused on the aspect of women, development of women, and addressing the issue of gender diversity in aviation. And from the various discussions, we have recommendations that have been made by the speakers in their interventions during the session. I will cover the summary of the recommendations, which will form inputs for AFRAA and various industry stakeholders as takeaway actions for implementing in our action plan. And to highlight, in summary, from the various discussions and interventions, we note that women numbers are still very low in STEM-related careers, and women representation is still very, very low in leadership position in the aviation sector. There has been some progress. However, a lot more needs to be done for us to close this gender diversity gap. The recommendations are classified under 4 main areas. The first area is on training. We need to empower women in aviation through training. Knowledge is power. We need to have more events and dialogue among stakeholders on women empowerment in aviation, such as today's forum, such as the 2018 ICAO Gender Summit, so that we can discuss and derive action and on areas, on issues that are pertinent to drive the agenda forward. We need to have job and career fairs for women, for youth, as well as those with disabilities. We need to facilitate access to education and training and offer subsidized training. Case in examples given by ICAO on the subsidized courses offered online for women at 50% discount. We also need to encourage our African airlines to offer more ab initio programs at subsidized rates for young, aspiring aviation professionals, and specifically to young women. Women are also encouraged to participate in online training by skilling and reskilling. The second recommendation is on collaboration across the industry. Airlines are encouraged to sign up for the IATA 25 by 2025 initiative. We have learned how the initiative is beneficial to drive the agenda forward on addressing gender diversity. Collaboration across the industry is also important, and we need to share the best practices. We have also learned from the aspect on the tourism. What is the tourism sector doing? The numbers, the trends indicate that there is some progress ahead of aviation, and there are some aspects that we can copy and implement on the aviation front. The third aspect on the recommendations are on deliberate actions at leadership level. Gender diversity is important at board and at leadership level. The agenda needs to come from top down. We need to also put in place gender inclusivity programs and have deliberate policies on women empowerment at state level as well as at organizational level. We got examples from what other organizations are doing, what IATA is doing, what CANZO is doing, what UNWTO is doing, and what ICAO is doing to drive this agenda forward. We also need to implement mentorship programs both at personal level as well as at organizational levels, where it was recommended that organizations could put up mentorship programs that are structured to support young women in aviation. The fourth area of recommendations is actions at individual level. We had the 5 C's, which were clearly discussed. The first C is commitment. At individual level, young women should be committed to achieve similar outcomes as their male counterparts. You are able to do anything that you put your mind to achieve. You need to have confidence, capital, charisma, and competence. And this, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the close of today's webinar, workshop, conference, where we have very well articulated the issue on gender diversity, discussed the issues around it, and come up with recommendations for the industry, for the young women also to, at individual level, to implement so that we can achieve the objective of closing the gender gap in aviation. And this brings us to the close of today's activities. Tomorrow we have a very exciting program which will be covering discussions on youth development. Today was only on women. And we have lined up some good sessions, very informative sessions. Please join us tomorrow, same time, 1300 hours East African time, using the same conferencing link. We have presentations to be made on right skilling by IATA, right skilling for the industry restart. We have a presentation by AFRAA on initiatives to blossom the next generation aviation professionals and develop future trainers in Africa. We also have a presentation on ICAO NGAP strategies and best practices to attract and retain the next generation of aviation professionals in Africa. There is an executive interview by one of Collins Aerospace beneficiaries of the various initiatives that Collins is implementing, and tune in to follow this executive session. There is another executive interview on the Collins initiative, Bet She Can, and we have a panel discussion which will discuss the measures to facilitate affordable training and development of skilled young professionals in Africa. Ethiopian Airlines Managing Director of the Academy will be on the panel. We will be joined by Educator Global, as well as the Young Aviators Club of Africa. We also have the Young African Aviation Professional Association founder, Ms. Fadimatu, who will be on the panel tomorrow. And we look forward to a very fruitful and informative discussion. We'll conclude the day with a presentation on cost-effective solutions to address the training capacity needs, which will be done by Prodigy, and we'll learn more about their iFlySim initiative, as well as the Prodigy ATO project. We look forward to meeting you tomorrow, and from AFRAA, thank you and goodbye.